Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Matouche, and this is my Stage 5 Psych Talk. Let's go ahead and dive on into it. The topic I chose to look a little bit more into was classical conditioning. You may recognize that handsome man on your screen. No, not the one in the corner, the one just below Mr. Ivan Pavlov himself, pretty well known for his experiment with the salivating dog. All right, the title of my article was Increasing Implicit Self-Esteem Through Classical Conditioning. Bit of a mouthful. The authors were Jodine R. Bacchus, Mark W. Baldwin, and Dominic J. Packer. So thank you all for writing this article for us. What did we talk about? In this article, they wanted to find out if they could get a connection between increasing implicit self-esteem through classical conditioning methods. Remember, implicit, you can think of that as internal. Explicit, you can think of it as external. So they wanted to look at implicit self-esteem and could they increase that through an experiment. A few different purposes. They talk about how low self-esteem has been connected to a few negative social interactions, relationships, drug abuse, things like that. They also talk about how implicit self-esteem can be an indicator for a few different things. And they also wanted to test the connection of implicit self-esteem and aggression and see if they could find some real-world applications. Couple hypotheses. I won't read these word for word, but again, they wanted to find out, could you increase someone's implicit internal self-esteem through classical conditioning methods, through a computer game specifically? And could individuals who had low implicit self-esteem at the beginning, if they underwent this conditioning task, could they report lower aggression after the experiment? So what did they do? The researchers had two different groups, control group, experiment group. They had the individual sit at a computer, answer 5-6 different questions about themselves. They wanted to get some self-relevant information. What street were you born on? What city were you born on? Things like that, things that pertained to them. Then what they would do is they would tell the participants, hey, your computer screen is going to be divided into 4 quadrants. A word is going to flash in one of those quadrants, and I need you to click that as fast as you can. So here's an example. 4 different quadrants. The participants would get a word. That word, in my case, Boulder. Boulder applies to me. That is the city I was born in. And boom, smiling face would pop up. And the idea is that would increase your implicit self-esteem. That was for the experiment group. The control group would click that self-relevant word, and not necessarily a smiling face would pop up. So that's how they balance things out. Participants, I had a little bit of a problem with this. We'll talk about that later, but here's the summary. 118 undergraduate volunteers from a college in Canada, 36 men, 82 women, age roughly 19. Not a lot of diversity. There was no racial demographic information given. It just seemed kind of narrow to me. Method and measures. So they had a lot of different measures they asked the participants to complete before and after. They had the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, the name letter measure, state self-esteem scale, the profile of mood states, several different tasks they had them complete just to get a baseline of where the individuals were. I'm not going to read these all, but here's kind of some examples. On the whole, I am satisfied with myself. They asked participants to rate the letters of the alphabet. I wasn't a big fan of the name letter measure, and that was also one of the issues I had with this article. And there's a couple more for you. They also had an aggression measure where users were allowed to punish another user they had beaten with a loud blast of noise. Of course, all within the computer game. So what happened? Were the authors correct? Yes, they were correct. In short, the authors reported finding successful connections between both hypotheses. You can read about the blurbs right there if you want directly from the article. But in short, they were able to increase self-esteem, and they did find a connection between lower aggression after the conditioning task was done. Here's some values for you. They eventually divided everyone kind of into 4 groups. Whether you had low or high implicit and explicit self-esteem. They also use something called a Z-score, which is fancy statistical analysis to combine a mean of several different things. And they only had one graphic. Also a little bit of a problem I had, but the main thing I want you to take away from this is number 4 over there. They found a strong connection between that implicit self-esteem gain and with the experiment group who underwent the task. So congruency, those who had low implicit and low explicit, or high implicit and high explicit, they found the biggest increases after the conditioning task. And they also, again, found that decrease in aggression after the task was completed. Several strengths and weaknesses here. I'm not going to read them all, but the journal article was published in 2004. That was quite a while ago. Again, I didn't like the population split. Very narrow, college students, more women than men, just not very even. The source of the article was a strength. It was an academic journal. It was peer-reviewed with empirical evidence. The authors were very straightforward with their findings. Overall, it was pretty easy to read their conclusions. Some confounding variables, the participants may have inadvertently skewed their results, and events could have been happening outside of the person's life, outside of the study. Here's some links for the measures. Go ahead and click on them if you are curious. Otherwise, thank you for watching. My time is up. Here's the reference for my article.